Hey, thanks for joining us. Daniel Dotse from Lead for Ghana. Daniel, why don't you take a few minutes just to introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Sam, for having me on here. I'm quite excited to, share my insights with everybody. But my name is Daniel Dotse. I actually wear two hats. I'm the Group CEO for Lead for Africa. I also kind of currently run Lead for Ghana as well. My other hat is actually also wearing a different hat, which is also the CEO of Capital, which is a social investment management firm trying to raise funds and support young entrepreneurs across the continent. I'm more than happy to be here and to having this discussion with you.
Amazing. So you were born in Ghana. Tell us a bit about your hometown. Where do you come from?
So I originally come from the eastern part of Ghana called the Volta region. It's a beautiful coastal. If you ever happen to be in Ghana, you should definitely visit the Keta. Beautiful beaches, amazing people. I grew up in Accra, which is the capital city of so I lived my entire life in the city. But at some point, my parents also moved to the northern part of Ghana, called the northern region, but specifically lived in Tamale. So we spent about 3 years in Tamale, living in Tamale as well. So I've had a little bit of stints between living in the northern parts of the country and also living on the southern parts of the country.
You've seen the whole place, right? I mean, I think Ghana's kind of shaped a bit like a chocolate bar. It's like tall, thin country with. My dad's actually been to the north of the country. My dad visited me in Accra when I was there a few years ago, and he took the plane up to Tamale. And,
okay, you should have joined him. It's a beautiful. It may feel like a different country, but you're in the exact same place. It's a really cool, culturally different part than the southern part, but it's an amazing place as well.
Well, speaking of culturally different, tell us about your move to Ithaca and in upstate New York, Cornell. How did that happen?
So I mean, I went to school till high school, and after high school, I first moved to Lakeside, Pennsylvania. So I did my undergrad at Acadia University in Lakeside. And after my undergrad, I decided to pursue my graduate degree in mechanical engineering. So I applied to Cornell, got in, and literally, got to Ithaca, and I was quite shocked. I mean, I had experienced cold, but I've never experienced anything like the Ithaca cold. That's quite brutal. Oh yeah. The winters were quite brutal, but it also forced me to try to do different things during the winter time. So we played a lot of indoor soccer. I watched a couple of hockey games, just to keep myself active. But beyond that, I mean, Cornell was an amazing experience, to say the least. Beautiful, beautiful campus, amazing professors, and made some really good friends that I'm still in touch with until this.
Yeah, no doubt. I had a friend and a colleague who was Ghanaian, and she left Accra to move to Glasgow in Scotland.
Oh my God.
She was fine, but I think her mother had a heart attack. Her mother was terrified.
Yeah, fun story actually. When I was moving to the US, I think I was probably about like 19 years old at that point. My mom was also quite worried because I got to the airport because she said, "Call me immediately you land, okay? Because you're traveling alone, you're a teenager, and I want to make sure that you're okay." But for some reason, I couldn't get opportunities to call her for like maybe a day or two. So she was scared. She didn't know what was happening with me. and so
You're in trouble.
Apparently she was calling aunties and uncles all over the place to find out if I was okay until I finally called her and she was a bit calm and so forth. But it's the mother's instinct to make sure their kids are okay.
For real, yeah, for real. What did she think about your diet when you moved to Pennsylvania? And what was your diet like? What food were you eating? Did you find?
Oh my God!
Did you find Ghanaian food?
Not really, not in the beginning. She was really worried about my diet because I mean I'm still a very quite skinny person, but when I was relatively young, I was really really skinny, and I didn't really like eating that much. So my parents, especially my mom, would actually make sure I was eating every day. So one of the biggest things she was worried about was if I was eating or not. And she also knew that I only ate with certain specific food. So she'll call me almost every day. Have you eaten? Are you okay? So at some point, I just had to tell, like, Mom, look, I'm in college now. I can take care of myself. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll be good. And that was it. But in the beginning days, she was really, 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 really concerned.
So was Pennsylvania your first time outside of Ghana? Was it your first time in the States? What were your first impressions?
Yes, Pennsylvania was my first time in the US. I mean, my first impressions, before then, I only saw the US through the lens of watching movies. And so I had certain perceptions about what America was before I got there. But I found Pennsylvania to be a very historical place as far as American history is concerned. Philadelphia is a beautiful place. I love the architecture.
Yeah.
The Philly cheesesteak was, on point. One of the things I had to get used to very quickly. Beyond that, I also found it to be a place of, heavy academic city, especially Philadelphia. Pennsylvania just had a lot of universities as well. So to be able to fit in really well and meet young people who were either studying the same thing I was studying or had ambitions of becoming entrepreneurs and just having a beautiful, diverse cultural lifestyle was amazing. I totally enjoy it. And I think Philadelphia is still one of my favorite cities in the US.
It's a wonderful place. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur, Daniel?
Yes, especially after high school. It's kind of funny. Also growing up, I had these different things I wanted to do. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a soldier for some reason. So every vacation, one of my uncles was a very senior level person in the military. And he was based in 37. Every vacation, and I'll watch him put on his boots, just being in the midst of soldiers and stuff. But at some point, I don't know. I just thought, look, I wanted to be in a profession where I was helping save lives more so than taking people's lives. So I switched to becoming.
How does your uncle feel about that?
So then I decided to switch to be a medical doctor. And I think at that point I was also watching Grey's Anatomy a lot. So I feel like everyone else watching Grey's Anatomy wanted to be a doctor for some reason.
Yeah.
So I was on that track for some time. And then I changed. I was like, you know what? I'm actually very curious about, what happens in space. So I remember telling my science teacher that, look, you know what? I actually want to be an astronaut. And he looked at me and said, look, Ghana doesn't have any astronomical programs in the country, right? It's like, I didn't know that. So that also shifted. So I had these shifts a lot. But I think it was when I got to college that I realized that when I actually got quite interested in the pharmaceutical world, I always thought it was almost like magic for someone to take, you have a headache, you take Advil, a couple of hours, the headache is gone. To me, that was magic. And I wanted to understand the magic behind that. So then I started, researching and I realized, this is what pharmaceutical companies were doing. So I think that's when my sense of entrepreneurship came about, because I also realized that the continent of Africa, there was no active pharmaceutical companies on the continent. And I saw that as a health issue. So I was like, you know what? I want to study something that will enable me to start one of the top pharmaceutical companies on the continent that will rival, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Roche, and all those. From there, it's like, how do I build something that can solve a major problem in the world, specifically in soil? So that's where it's talking about.
That's fascinating.
I think in terms of the cultural bit, I think it's necessitated. Ghana is a low-income country. We'll call it a middle-income country. So, finances are scarce. So a lot of people just don't have financial resources to pursue their passion and their dreams. So that's where the hassle comes in. So the hassle is more fueled by, how do I generate extra income to be able to support my life and lifestyle? So it's the environment necessitated, and that's why a lot of people, having that hustle culture. And that does not necessarily translate into entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is a whole different thing. I mean, that's the way see. So culturally, I think it's quite necessary for people to assess whole culture and you know, perspective. The flip side of being an entrepreneur, and I think I also had a better understanding of it after I left the country, because to me, I saw more of like individuals who were taking huge risks, and they were doing whatever it took to solve a problem, like a real problem that the world needed. So it went beyond, it wasn't, the financial reward was a sideshow to actually getting the problem solved. And if you solve a problem for the world rewards you by paying for that. And that's so the financial reward came secondary, as opposed to the hustle culture where the financials were what was driving the activities that people were. I think I also got a lot of inspiration from leaving Ghana and just seeing the world from a different lens and a different perspective. It made me funny, especially in New York. I don't know why, but I got really inspired by New York with the simple things. It could just be like, watching a really tall building, right? And I realized, like, God, human beings created this. Like, people created this. And these people are not any smarter than you or better than you, which means that you can create it too. Like, you just have to have the right mindset, the right resources, and make these things. So I drew a lot of inspiration from my environment, architecture, people, just engaging with individuals and just being wowed what humanity can do. So I got a lot from my travels more broadly.
Yeah. Mate, if you could bottle that up, that feeling of, someone did this, so why not me? That's the most powerful feeling in the world, isn't it? That's incredible. One thing that I find amongst folks in the Ghanaian diaspora is that drive to come home. And I think that there is a really strong, like, very positive national pride amongst Ghanaian folks, which is very good, very, like, loving, which we don't see in the UK. Like, in the UK, there's generally, like, I have this feeling that if someone's flying a flag, they're probably a bit racist, right? Now, that's unfair, but it's like, it's an impression that you have, right? We don't have the same relationship with our nation and with national pride that other folks do. And I think the States is another example. Like, people are here flying the flag, and it's really good.
Yeah.
Was it natural for you to go back to Ghana? Was it the obvious next natural step, or was there a challenge to face there?
Oh, good question. When I was moving back to Ghana, my close friends did not believe it when I was telling them, look, I have a one-way ticket to Ghana and I'm not coming back, because they thought I was the last person who would ever even think of moving. And the reason for that is, when I was back in college, I will always go back to Ghana, but I never stayed for more than 5 days. After 5 days, I was ready to leave. Because I was used to a certain lifestyle. I wanted my internet to be fast. I wanted reliable electricity and stuff, and I wasn't getting that. So I literally just come to Ghana, see my parents, say hi. It's been a, Merry Christmas, and then I'm out. I'm out. So telling them I was moving to Ghana, they were quite surprised by that. But I think I also got to a certain stage in my life where I felt like I did not want to be the guy who was on the fence and criticizing politics of the country and how the country is now developing and so forth. And I thought, look, I needed to roll up my sleeve and be part of the change process. And it would take people like myself and my colleagues to be the ones that actually help build the country. I also strongly believe that the elites in any society are responsible or are the guardians of that society. And just knowing the level of education I had and the level of exposure I had, I kind of considered myself as one of those individuals that are responsible for actually building a better country for everybody else. So that was, quite of a driving factor for me. Like, you've got all this knowledge, you have all this exposure. What do you want to do with that? Like, how can you pay it forward? That was one. The other thing too was, we kept hearing the same stories growing up, where the older generation either had a certain level of education, and then every year looks like that was reducing. And I didn't want that to be the narrative of my generation. Because when I talk to my dad and he tells me, oh, when I was in college, we're like only 2 in our dormitories. By the time we are done, companies come and they're trying to entice us to come work for them, and they're enticing them with cars and stuff. But when I compare that to what is happening in Ghana today, it's a whole different problem. You have students, 5-6 students in one dormitory for 2 people. Unemployment is high and so forth. So I keep asking him, like, you have a responsibility as a generation to make sure that what you came to meet, at least you maintain that, but you cannot bring it down. So for my generation is saying, look, if this is the country or continents that we are engaging with, how do we leave this country better for the next generation so that they can also build upon that and sort of going in a retrogressive way. So those are the two factors that really pushed me to moving back. To be honest, my mom was not very happy when I told her I was moving back. Typical African parents, they want their kids to go out there. But she was very understanding about the logic behind it and the purpose for which I wanted to come back home. And I'll do it all over again. Back.
Yeah. So obviously it's not just coming home, it's coming home with a mission and a purpose. What are the pillars of change that you think we can see in Africa as part of the work that you do? There's like my space is technology and obviously software, and I think AI is a huge thing, and Africa's clearly got a part to play there. But what does Africa have that maybe the rest of the world doesn't, or that it's best at?
Africa has incredible talent. When I say talent and when I say pure intelligence, it's incredible. And I'll give an example. When I got to Cornell, or just school in the US, this is an institution that brings the smartest people across the globe, right? Indians, Chinese, Americans, European, Africans, and so forth. And you have all of these individuals in a classroom. So you are operating with some of the best brains in the world. And it dawned on me that when it came to mathematics and engineering, majority of the time, the African students did incredibly well, right? And these are individuals who probably had a subpar basic education than their colleagues coming from other parts of the world. So just told me one thing, that look, these guys are incredibly smart people. The environments are just not being created that to foster that level of intelligence and translate it to some tangible products that will be created for the world. So one, talent is here. Just incredibly smart individuals, and I think the world is missing out without really tapping into that talent for reasons that maybe we can go into later on. Beyond that, there's also a lot of resources on the continent. Beyond human resources, there's also other resources on the continent that will really feed the rest of the world moving forward. We talk of materials for the TVs and phones and things. But that is also just culture. There's such a rich, happy culture on the continent, right? It's amazing people and how they can make themselves happy with the little things in life. And it's beautiful to watch. And I can go on and on, but I think those three things are pretty much the driving force for Africa. And maybe last, it's a very young population, right? Incredibly young population. And that is a huge advantage for Africa, but also for the rest of the world in terms of just, the workforce that can be generated through that. It's just an amazing thing to witness.
100%. So what about the work that you're doing? We're ready to tie up. So let's just finish with a few notes about the work that you do every day and the change that you're making.
Yeah, the whole idea for Lead for Africa and Lead for Ghana is how do we intentionally find young people that we think are going to be the next generation of leaders for the country. So the next presidents, the next ministers, the next secretaries of state, the next CEOs for these countries. And how do we help build an empathetic mindset for them, but also build their leadership capacity? So when they get into those roles, the decisions and policies they make will come from experience. So what we do as an organization is we recruit recent university graduates and young professionals. So people between the ages of 23 and we run them through a very intensive experiential leadership development program. We call the Lead for Ghana or Lead for Africa Fellowship. And with this program, they are required to go and live in an underserved community for 2 years. Wow. So they live there for 2 years. They serve as full-time teachers and they also serve as community leaders. They serve as full-time teachers because teachers are the only profession that actually leverages leadership skill sets on a day-to-day basis. If you can manage children coming from different homes, trust me, you can manage adults. Because kids are the most difficult group of people.
My mother was a teacher, and my wife's mother was a teacher as well. We come
Absolutely,
from
yeah. It's such an amazing. So they're able to do that, but what we're also trying to do is to get them to increase academic outcomes of the students in these communities that they're serving. So immediately they're having that impact. In the long term, they get to understand how the least in society live, the challenges that they are facing. So when they become ministers of state and CEOs and presidents of the country, the decisions they make for the country would have those people in mind. So they're actually making informed decisions for themselves and for the group of people that they are leading. So that's the work that Lead for Ghana and Lead for Africa has been doing, and we've seen tremendous impact over the past 10 years that's we've existed.
That's incredible. I can't wait to hear more about your success stories. Just to tie off, where can people find out more about you and about Lead for Ghana, Lead for Africa, and how can they help?
Great. Get onto our websites, leadforghana.org or leadforafrica.org. You can definitely learn a lot about the work we do. We're also very heavy on social media. On X, we are on Instagram. There's a lot of things on Instagram as well, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find us there. We tend to run a lot of radio interviews and TV interviews, so we have a lot of material on there as well. How they can help is, look, this is an idea. I call it the big social experiment. And there's one thing about having an idea. There's another thing about funding that idea. So the different ways they can help. Either they can help with just funding this idea, making sure that we're able to scale the impact that we've seen from Ghana across the continent itself. It could also just be volunteer work. It could be, hey, I have 3 months of, I would like to teach a class for 3 months, or I like to teach young people how to code. So it could be, personal skill set that you have that you want to help young people have. It could also just be monetary in terms of funding the programs that we have. And if you don't know how to help, please reach out to us. Just send an email to info@leadforghana.org or info@leadforafrica.org, and we will help you find a way that you can be helpful to the work that we do.
Awesome. That's fantastic. I'm glad you've got some ideas. Daniel Dotse, thanks for joining us here on Turntable 20s. It's been a great time getting to know you, and all the best. Thank
you so much, Sam. It's been an amazing time, spending this time with you as well. It's beautiful.